Hi, it's Kevin May from PhocusWire. Welcome to PundIT Show number 20. We have a repeat visitor, Miriam Moscovici from BCD Travel.
Hi.
Welcome back, second or third time, I can't remember.
Third, fourth, yeah.
Yeah, you're always very good. This is why we ask you to come back, because you've got strong opinions and you like to laugh, which is great. A first time, a debutant in Will Phillipson, the founder and ex-COO of SilverRail Technologies. Welcome,
Yes.
Will.
Thank you very much.
So, for those of you tuning in for the first time, the PundIT Show, we gather some pundits from around the industry and we talk about what we've been hearing today and just broader trends that are going on. So, we'll go to Cara Swisher. You don't need to have heard what she said to answer this kind of question, but she said, I didn't see it, I just heard this is what she said, there's too much capital swilling around in the industry and that is a dangerous thing. And I wondered if you we'll start with you, Will, as our debutant. Do you agree with her, and how dangerous is it and what can be done, do you think?
I do agree. I think there's, and that being said, I would love to figure out how to get some of that extra capital
Right.
that's rolling around the industry. There's too much capital. It's being sprayed out across all sorts of ideas and people doing things that creates an environment where things are being done irresponsibly to a certain degree.
How would you define irresponsibly?
Well, there's ideas, there's a couple of cases of ideas that are a little bit half-baked, that people are going in, taking this idea, running without full understanding of the consequences of what's happening. She had a couple of comments sort of alluded to when asked about Oyo, for example. She obviously has very strong opinions about WeWork and things like that. And when money is easy to come by, ideas aren't necessarily vetted. You know, you just, hey, I have an idea. Well, here's, and it's not a million, it's 100 million or something really big.
Yeah.
And that also, you know, when money is scarce, you treat it more carefully as a founder, as an entrepreneur or business owner. When it's just handed more than you can, like you have to actively figure out how to spend, you go do ridiculous things. And we sort of saw that in the dot-com boom 20 years ago. And it's even bigger this time with, you know, multi-billion-dollar valuations.
Is the problem purely falling at the feet of the VCs though? Are they solely responsible, or have we just got some really good founders who are great at persuading VCs to part with huge buckets of cash?
So it was interesting, Brad and his session there a second ago, and I apologize, I don't remember his guest's name.
Chamath from Virgin Capital.
Thank you.
Virgin Galactic.
Galactic, yeah. He was actually saying that the seeds of this were in the bust, 10 years ago, that the bailouts that occurred, bailing out, and I don't fully understand what he was saying, but bailing out the people who caused the problem. And that generated an environment where people were desperately searching for returns on how to, build up the pension funds and everything else that had lost money through all these investments. And it created an environment where more and more of this capital was going into places and forcing, SoftBank and others, they have this money, they need to spend it to be able to generate the returns. Yeah. And when you have this massive wallet behind you of money that you have to do something with, you don't do as much diligence on it because you got so much, just put it around, and it's created that environment. So it's not entirely VC's fault. There's a lot of blame to go around, all the way down to the investors. Like, should you really be accepting $100 million Series A or whatever the ridiculous valuations are? So it's a lot of people who deserve.
So Miriam, I know it'd be unfair to ask you to comment on particular companies within your sector, but there's been a lot of money going into business travel.
Yeah.
So any kind of broad discussion on it?
I always hear, right, there's the capital is cheap and they want to put it to work. So there's a lot going out there now. I think I work for a traditional global family-owned business, right? We're a very different investor than some of the other investors out there. And so from my perspective, I think what's interesting is that, number one, I think a lot of the B2C companies that were really active in years past, a lot of them have pivoted to B2B. There's a huge focus on corporate travel, and I think rightfully so, because it's a very large business. But for coming from a legacy, a large global family-owned company, right? We look at the market, and it gives us the opportunity to learn, right? Like some of these ideas, they're often vetted in real time with real money, and it's not ours. So
Brilliant.
That's horrible to say.
So what you're saying is that you can watch the others cock things up, right?
Well, no, I think that we are getting to watch it play out in almost in hyper speed, right? We get to see new blossoms of old ideas, right? Sometimes an idea comes up. We're seeing even now ideas working that wouldn't work 10 years ago or 15 years ago, right? So, I think that as a not so innocent bystander, people like me and other companies like ours, right? We're able to see this landscape. That does mean that sometimes we can't get in because we just can't wrap our heads around valuations that a VC can. But I think just being able to witness it all and watch this money at play and see who the winners or losers are, I think just is fantastic for us.
So sorry, Will, go ahead.
I was just going to make a comment on that. I think the last couple of years have been really an interesting time. It's been a very stable time for corporate travel from the perspective of we haven't had a business airline as opposed to Thomas Cook's that has failed. We haven't had a volcano. Thank you. That word, or things like that. And the thing that I think is interesting is business travel is considered complicated for a reason. People want to get into it because there's money there. Corporations pay money to do things, which leaves commissions have gone to zero and all sorts of things like that. And what will be interesting is there's certain companies around that have been around for a very long time that know what to do when things hit the fan, and you've got business travelers all over the world, and you've got to figure out how to repatriate them and get them back and take care of them and all the rest of that. Some of these younger companies that are coming in on travel tools or TMCs or all sorts of things, some of them pride themselves on saying, we have no travel experience. You guys don't know what you're doing. We're going to do it differently. Coming in to change the status quo. And it's like, okay, it's all very well when everything's perfect. It's like making a booking, an airline booking, really easy to do. It's all the other stuff that you got to do that starts to get complicated.
Okay. I don't know how much of you saw yesterday, the launch and the summit things. Were you involved in it this year?
I was a dragon.
Okay. And did you see many of the things that were going on?
I saw some of them, and I was on the focus group for launch.
The perception I get from just talking to people, and we've interviewed every single one of the innovators in the launch.
Okay.
Yeah. I think the quality's been pretty good this year.
I thought this year was awesome.
Yeah.
I thought the presentations were awesome. I thought those on stage were awesome. I think the genders were a little more mixed this year. I think we had a lot more women leaders on stage, which was always exciting. But no, I thought the quality of the presentations was terrific. I thought the variety was terrific. We had a supersonic jet guy.
Cool was
exosonic,
yeah.
How cool was that?
And I can get all dreamy about these things, but I anything that encourages people to travel more, like I wrote a couple down, the tour, the gamification of tours, right? What were they called? Questo, right?
Yeah.
Those guys, the Game-IT, helping more travel planning, ironically, B2B2C. And then just some of those other things, like the jet lag guys.
Yeah. Oh, they're terrific. We all use it on the team.
So I've been asking people, and it works.
Yeah, one of my team members absolutely swears by it.
Yeah,
She
so
just
there's
thinks it's
been a
terrific,
mix,
so.
right? And in years past, there was like, a dozen travel planning tools, and you could see kind of the judges' body language kind of move around as we saw the seventh or eighth one. Yeah, exactly, another itinerary. So, I thought the variety was good, and honestly, I think the quality of the presenters was great. I love the presentations this year.
Okay, any stood out for you in particular, Will?
I'm fixated on, what is it, Troop Travel?
Troop Travel, right? Another favorite.
I mean, the challenge when you have multiple offices or something of where do you have a meeting and everyone has an opinion. It's like, wow, real data and actual numbers behind it. Yeah, very, very cool.
We show that to corporate buyers, Troop Travel, and they really dig it. The idea that they can identify where everyone's at and how long they need to meet, and the machine can give them all sorts of examples of great meeting locations and why and where. It's just great.
Could we broadly say then that a lot of the stuff that we're seeing is actually useful this time?
Yeah.
Whereas been guess they're solving a problem, but perhaps not a problem at scale or a problem that's a really genuine one that can actually run. I think the one that someone mentioned earlier was AirDNA.
AirDNA.
Is it AirDNA, which was the one that does the data capture for private accommodation.
Okay.
And it got 10 thumbs up.
Yeah.
And the other one's got 8 and 2 down. So it was the only one that got all 10 hands up or something like that. And so, they've got thousands of customers. They're all these property management companies. Instead of single owners of the homes, they're ones that own 30 of them. And they just love it because they can do seasonality, they can do all this kind of stuff. So there's like genuine problems.
Yeah, I like the
for a
beachy guy.
change.
Yeah, beachy, right? And what got me about his presentation was that line where he said, "Stop making your guests get up at 7 a.m. to go put a towel on a beach chair." Right? And I was like, yeah. Like
Did
that,
he tell you
he's
the
right.
reason how they all came about?
No.
He was away with his family and he had a really young child, and he was carrying the child or something, and all of a sudden, he was going to go off and lay the towels down on the sun lounges, and all of a sudden the child needed taking back up to change his nappy diaper, as you would say.
Yeah.
And then when he came back, it was all gone. He's So it's a classic startup based on a personal experience.
Right? Absolutely.
Any others that stood out for you, Will?
Blank on the name again. The guy that showed the Louisiana versus Texas, the game with the cell phone data and the hotel. That was fascinating. I mean, living in Europe now, everything sprung to mind of GDPR and PII and all the rest of that sort of stuff. But the idea that you, in any part of the travel industry, this could be so interesting, of understanding why your customers are actually using you. You come to a hotel, nobody comes to stay in a hotel, right? They're coming to do something around. Nobody takes a flight because they just like, well, not nobody. There are some of us that are weirdos, but
aviation geeks.
And to be able to understand that the reason these customers or this segmentation of customers is coming because they want to go shopping, or they want the outlet malls or to the game or something like that. Wow, could you start tailoring your marketing, your messaging, your whole stay experience, shuttle bus to the stadium or whatever it is, that would be tremendously empowering and change the customer experience, which would be phenomenal.
It's interesting because when I was interviewing him here, in the back of my mind I was remembering, because Amadeus has been talking about this. They got this idea that we're going to have the end of room types eventually. Every room will be dynamically priced out depending on what the people might be going for. So when you plug what they're saying into what the data that's kind of emerging out of what they can capture there, and you suddenly have maybe, you could even look at it as a challenge for hotels, or it's like an amazing opportunity to get some true personalization, right?
And the actual physical experience. Right. So if somebody's coming for a marathon, you are equipping them with what they might need for a marathon, or if they're there for, I don't know.
You need some nice bubble salts by the bath afterwards, after they've done the marathon.
Absolutely.
So they can soak, right?
Exactly, right? Yep. But you know what we didn't see is, and I just have to say, I'm always kind of dogging the travel planning tools. I right now am trying to plan a vacation with a group of friends, and we don't have a planning tool to use. So, I was kind of going through my notes of the last 10 or so Phocuswrights, trying to figure out, is any of those planning tools still alive?
They still survive.
They're not. And the ones that pivoted to B2B didn't leave a consumer product behind for us to plan. So I don't know, it still seems like a problem, because we can't figure out, how to find our yurt in Scotland, and how to, add all of our tours and who wants to do what and vote on things. Like, there's just not really a faculty. I was excited about Game & right? They're doing that on the B2B side. But it's the irony is that for years we've been saying, stop with the travel planning. And now I happen to be planning a vacation. I don't know what to do with myself. And I think what also is really interesting, and maybe this is an opportunity for these travel planning tools again, is because in my group that's traveling, half of us are post-Facebook. Right? So, people are starting to become, are we in the post-Facebook era now, where now I don't have Facebook Messenger and a new Facebook group I can create. And so we're now, maybe there's a new opportunity now for some of these social things, because it is likely you have friends that are not on Facebook and want no part of it.
I was approached on Monday with mentoring sessions. One of the people that approached me to have a chat is doing a startup on social-based travel planning. So it'll be interesting to see how she evolves that.
Yes.
I suppose because here we don't have it like WeChat, because that's what WeChat does, isn't it?
That whole
here
conversational
we use WhatsApp,
commerce.
and at some point, maybe WhatsApp is going to open up a little bit so that you can plug in things like that. Because I'm in loads of WhatsApp groups with my friends and buddies and family and all that kind of stuff, and we use it to talk about plans we're doing for a festival or something like that. So at some point, someone's going to do something for WhatsApp when they open it up, which I think they will do.
Maybe they're watching right now.
Of course. It's not a maybe.
Where else would they be?
Right, so let's move on. Let's move on from the startups. And I'm picking up on a theme that's been discussed here in our studio this week, and that's the rise of the super apps, right?
Yeah.
And Asia Pacific has nailed it. And so then the question becomes, so when does the super app kind of come to the Western Hemisphere? Now, some say, well, it's here and it's Google, because now that they're rolling everything into Google Maps. So that becomes they close trips, they close the other things. Everything goes into Google Travel, which is an map based, right? So is it them that's going to create the super app for the West, or is it somebody else? We'll start with you, Will.
Oh, jeez.
I mean, Amazon is one of the ones that kind of comes up because it is the cross-industry.
Amazon, and then Apple is the other one. The question is, I think what all of these guys are trying to do, WeChat and Alipay at the same time, is get as close to the edge as possible, is the way I describe it. The device, whether it be the watch, the phone, the wearables in the future, all the rest of that, is going to control the funnel. Yep. And that's part of the reason why Google's scrambling so much, because they realize that the website, which was the gateway, is going to go away. People aren't going to go to the web anymore. They're picking up their phone. Hey Google, hey Siri, hey Alexa. And so it's the notion of the super app may not exist in the Western Hemisphere in the same way. It'll be who gets the top tier placements in those Siri, Alexa, Google, or whatever the other ones are, that when you say, how do I get to down to Miami or to Key West, or I need to get back to London, or whatever it is, that is the provider for that interface that gives you that, as opposed to an Alexa skill where you say, start this app and then go into it. Because each of these guys are going to try and own as much of that user experience as possible. That's why they're all going down to the voice control and all the rest of that. It's sort of what's the default installed apps or desktop installed apps going.
So on that, us in the media got tremendously excited about 10 years ago when the US Patents Office released a bunch of new patents. And one was from Apple, and it was for a patent that they called ITrap.
Yeah.
And we was, oh my God, here it comes.
Yeah.
It's finally here. We wrote lots of analyses and got lots of people to write op-eds about how it was going to turn everything on its head, and they never did it.
Yeah.
So first of all, why do you not think they did it?
I have no idea. I'm listening to this conversation with fascination. The only thing I can offer is, like, when I think about these super apps, I feel like there's two big pieces where these are going to come from, and I'm surprised. Maybe I just don't hear it enough. But the payment angle, right? Where you're paying and how you're paying is like one doorway into this kind of super app, or messaging, who you're talking to, who you're connected to, right? Mm-hmm. And you don't see either of those. You don't see the banks getting involved in this, right? Or the card companies, or like nobody's kind of stepping up from the finance kind of world, right? Where I make and save and spend my money. I don't see any movement coming from that space, right? They don't show up here and talk about that. Right. And we don't also see it from the messenger space. And now that, we're kind of moving into a post-Facebook world for some people, at least in North America. That's what comes to mind as I think about the messaging angle and the payment angle, and those aren't where it's coming from. And we automatically think about Amazon, right? We think about Apple, we think about those guys. But I'm wondering where the payment folks are and where the money folks are, right? And where are the messaging folks?
But that's where you see the commonality, right? Amazon has all your payment information. You use it all the time with one click. Google Wallet, exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Apple Pay with all your boarding passes and everything.
So I'm being
else.
too literal.
Well, no, but you look at,
right.
you go see a presentation when Alipay presented at WIT 2 years ago when I was there. The data that they have on what people are doing and more than any travel company has on travel, right? Yeah. They have all this information. And so I think the commonality is, right, they're trying to own the edge and they're trying to reduce that friction and realizing that travel itself is hard. They don't want to deal with travel. They don't want to, other than Amazon, they don't want to deal with fulfillment of stuff or anything of that nature. But if they control the personal information, and Apple's bent is on privacy, others have other aspects of it, and then the payment piece, then anybody can plug into the ecosystem, but you're bound to it, because if I have all my payment cards in Apple, you're going to do Apple Pay as your thing. If you're Google Wallet, you'll do that. If you're using Amazon, and that's why Facebook is trying to get into cryptocurrency, be a bank, all the rest of those sort of things, because they're realizing, oh shit. The other part that Facebook was trying to do is come out with a phone, because again, they got to own that edge device of what the people are using.
It's why the Amazon thing scares a lot of people here, right?
Rightly
Because
so.
if they really did it, that would be.
How is flights in India going?
They don't say. It's still operating, so it's gone through.
Are they here?
No. Amazon Web Services always come.
Okay.
They always spend a couple of people. Well, that's a completely different thing, right?
Sure.
Yeah. It's 6 months since the test started, and it's still running. But they never, they never comment on how it's going. So, but yeah, I mean, when people start talking about Amazon, that's when they think, oh crap.
Yeah.
Because they, to your point, they just know so much, right?
Okay. And that's where the challenge Apple has is they do things really flashy and good, but it's always 85% there, and then things kind of break on the back end. You see this with this Apple Card, great experience, some issues on the back end on equality and that side of things, as well as you can't share a card, you can't go to get a statement really easily and things like that. Google, it's always about the ad dollars, and so there's a little bit of there. Facebook has trust issues. The challenge with Amazon is they work really hard, they get it right, and they do a really good job. So everybody should be afraid.
Okay, so last topic before we get to our little game here. Booking Trip, Skyscanner, and Trip.com, Skyscanner, and have you got used to calling them Trip.com? C-Trip? No, nor have I. A bunch of them have got together and they formed this sustainability pact. It was launched with our Prince Harry from the UK in Holland about 3 or 4 months ago, and there was lots of nice things that they were saying about it's the industry, we're all going to get together and we're all going to start doing things for the greater good. It's all very altruistic.
Love it.
They all flew there?
Sorry?
They all flew
in. They all flew, but they all offset.
Great.
I mean, that would be outrageous if they didn't. So,
of course.
It's obviously about bloody time, right?
Yeah. Well, and I'm actually I'm surprised we didn't hear anything. There was no real sustainability in any of the startups that we were talking about. They didn't really bring it up, right? Those that competed on the stage.
Yep.
I thought it was wholly missing. And what's interesting is in corporate.
Left Travel was one.
Yeah, there was one.
Okay, there was one in the
mentioned it.
launch.
Yeah.
Okay. Corporate travel, sustainability is one of the top few things that we are all talking about in corporate travel. And that perhaps...
is that constantly, or is that just suddenly ramped up this year because of flight shaming, because of Greta Thunberg?
I mean, I think it's been growing, but I think over the last couple of years, I think it's really been growing. And I'll tell you why. I think because, we see, at least in North America, we see the example of CEOs of companies going above and beyond what regulatory bodies in the United States right now are expecting of them when it comes to sustainability, right? We're seeing CEOs lead, private companies lead. And so I think what we're seeing in corporate travel is some of these large travel managers, right, of large corporate programs, they're looking at each other to say, well, why can't we do better? And if several of these large companies and these large travel programs commit to certain types of behavior, I believe that we can move the needle where regulatory bodies will notice. You know, if we get 10 large clients to all say, between Denver and London, we're going to preference United because they're flying the 787-800, which is 30% more efficient than what a competitor airline is flying with their 747-400. 10 large corporations can move that needle, and people will recognize that. If we can get, you know, millions of business travelers to just leave 3 pounds of stuff at home, right, and not bring it with them, we can eliminate, you know, barrels and barrels and barrels of jet fuel. If we can remind business travelers, hey, if you don't need your laptop on the 2-day, leave it at home. It's 6 pounds, right? And if everyone leaves 6 pounds, like, we can make a difference in corporations. And I think that's what people are recognizing. And it's just getting louder. And I think you're going to see a lot more in business travel.
I mean, Will, you were formerly involved in a company that was about rail, which is, you know,
another great example of a sustainable alternatives that
well
business
done
people
for that.
will do.
But I mean, just your general view on that.
So I have a couple of thoughts on sustainable travel. So first of all, the answer is not to reduce travel, because travel, you know, there's nothing better than a face-to-face, with all due respect to video conferencing and all the rest of that. It's also really important, as the world gets more divided, getting people to experience other cultures as opposed to them over there is really important. The thing that I liken this to is there's been challenges in the past where countries and economies have risen to the challenge. And I think the growing concern about the environment is really good. It would be better if there was some governmental level concern about it as well.
Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? I mean, you can do stuff as brands.
Yeah.
You need, whether it's regulators or, as you say, industry regulators or the governments, to really push brands into doing more potentially.
But it's also, you know, where people rise to innovation. So there's a question of the regulatory environment which would encourage innovation towards that, which will happen regardless. You know, the states are doing it in the absence of the federal government. You see hotels moving towards, how do we remove plastic, single-use plastic bottles. All of that stuff is great, and that's going to spur innovation. And, you know, as they find over and over again, reducing water, reducing consumption of electricity actually is a profit motive after you've done the investment, and it's good for companies. So those things are fantastic. The other thing that I'm a little concerned about is you see a lot of adventure travel or, you know, sustainable ecotourism go to Costa Rica. And so now all of a sudden you have 25 million people, I'm making up numbers. The herds trampling through. And it's like, wow, isn't this great? Oh, wait, there's nothing left here. So we've got to figure out, you know, as Venice sinks, where do people go and how do you manage that in a way that doesn't destroy?
The data management of tourism is another one entirely, isn't it? So, okay, right. So we're coming up close to time. So we haven't done this for a couple of episodes.
Oh, really? Okay. I'm ready.
So it's the...
so all the juicy questions
are left. The bag of questions there. So pull one out, read it out.
Okay.
And give us...
Here we go.
Well, while you think of it, Miriam, pull one out and then we'll come back to you. Right. Go for it.
Well, this is a tough one because I'm on my own at the moment. So who is the person you most admire in your organization?
You could say me.
At this table.
By process of elimination, it's a very small pool.
Miriam.
How do you choose who to hire when faced with two equally qualified people? I think someone that feels in their heart, right, the mission of somebody in business travel. We're in the world peace business. We're in the business of taking care of human beings. So somebody who's really focused on that.
Okay, one more for you. Well,
all right. Does the industry or travelers drive evolution? Oh, interesting. To a large degree, I would say it's ticked off travelers who start either complaining or start a company to do something
Okay.
and then get
There's so
swallowed
many
up by
startups that are inspired by
Yeah.
having a crappy experience, right? Last one goes
Oh,
to
I
you.
get another.
Yep.
All right. What travel industry development or brand do you wish you'd thought of first? Like Expedia. Right, is that bad? That's good,
No,
right?
no. Okay, right. So that's it. Thank you very much for participating
Brilliant.
in that.
Thank you.
Thank you for your thoughts and opinions and your excellent
Thanks for
punditry as
having
always.
us.
It was Miriam Moscovici, Will Phillipson. Thank you very much.
Thank
This
you.
was the PundIT Show number 20, and we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot.